meet on holy ground. We meet on holy ground, brought into being as life encounters life, as personal histories merge into the communal story, as we take on the pride and pain of our companions, as separate selves become community. How desperate is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into the lives of those we meet, and their welcome into our own. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and in this place, in this space, for we meet on holy ground.
Now is the time in our service when we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all of us that help support our ability to thrive and gather. For those attending in person, we will pass the collection plate. Please use the envelope you'll find in the pew, write your name, and indicate if your offering is part of your pledge or is a donation.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be my moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Hey, please turn in your great hymnal, number 124, Be That Guide.
Sabeeha Rehman is the blogger, public speaker, podcaster, and author of the memoir Threading My Prayer Rug, One Woman's Journey from Pakistani Muslim to American Muslim. The book was shortlisted for the 2018 William Saroyan International Prize for Writing, received honorable mention in spirituality by the San Francisco Book Festival Awards in 2017, and was listed by Booklist as Top 10 Religion and Spirituality Books 2016, and Top 10 Diverse Nonfiction Books 2017, and was listed among the top memoirs by Reader's Digest. Excerpts of her memoir were featured in the Wall Street Journal and Salon.com. She was selected by Wiki EasyVid as 5 nonfiction writers telling captivating stories. She has co-authored her second book with Walter Ruby titled We Refuse to Be Enemies: How Muslims and Jews Can Make Peace, One Friendship at a Time. In 2022, she published her third book, It's Not What You Think, An American Woman in Saudi Arabia. She is an op-ed contributor to the Houses of Worship column of the Wall Street Journal. Her pieces have been published in Newsweek, New York Daily News, the Baltimore Sun, Forward, Salon.com, Tiferet, Pathos.com, and Washington Jewish Week. Sabeeha Rehman migrated from Pakistan to the United States in 1971. After a hurried arranged marriage to a Pakistani doctor in New York. She holds a master's in healthcare administration and has had a 25-year career as a hospital executive. Her career spanned hospitals in New York, New Jersey, and Saudi Arabia. Raising children Muslim in the absence of a Muslim community was a daunting challenge. With time running out, in the early 1980s, she began the work of establishing a Muslim community on Staten Island, which culminated in the building of a mosque. When her grandson Omar was diagnosed with autism, she left her career as a healthcare executive and devoted herself to serving families affected by autism. In 2008, she co-founded the National Autism Association New York Metro chapter and served as its president from 2008 to 2011. As a public speaker, Ms. Rehman has spent several decades engaging in interfaith dialogue, including keynote speaker. Since the publication of her book, she has given over 250 talks in nearly 100 cities at houses of worship, academic institutions, libraries, and community organizations, including Chautauqua Institution. She has lectured on the art of memoir writing at academic institutions, including Hunter College. She blogs on topics related to American Muslim experience at www.sabeeharehman.com/blog. She's the co-host with Walter Ruby on their podcast, We Refuse to Be Enemies, featured on YouTube and Spotify. Ms. Sabeeha Rehman lives in New York City with her husband, Khalid, a retired hematologist, oncologist. Let's now welcome Sabeeha Rehman.
Good morning. Good morning. Salam and peace. Thank you, Mary, for that kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you all for welcoming me in this beautiful space. After my husband completed his medical residency, we decided to settle on Staten Island because it reminded me of Pakistan. Single-family homes, lots of vegetation, and a feeling of community. He started his private practice with his office on Richmond Road in Dungan Hills and made his patient rounds at what was once St. Vincent's Medical Center, Bailey Seton, Doctors Hospital, and Richmond Memorial. Do those names sound familiar? Once upon a time. We settled in a house on a cliff on Lighthouse Hill. It was to be our home for the next 35 years. This is where we raised our sons, leaving only after they left the nest. I grew up in a secular society and was a cultural Muslim, not knowing much about the theology of the faith. Is the sound okay? Okay. In the first few years of living in New York, I drifted away from the faith. The environment wasn't there. There were no mosques, no Muslim community, no Muslims. Ramadan came and went, and I stopped fasting. The communal spirit of breaking fast with family and friends was missing. However, once my little boys started school, I began to worry. How do I inculcate the Muslim faith in them when mommy is ignorant? There were no teachers, no books. So I went looking. I walked into the Staten Island Mall, into the Walden Books bookstore, and in the children's section found a book titled Stories from the Bible. In it were all the stories that my grandfather would tell me when I was a little girl. The stories of Abraham, Moses, Joseph, Jesus. Only Prophet Muhammad was missing, and I thought I'd wing that. Every day I'd sit with my little boy in the afternoon sun and read him stories from the Bible. But that wasn't enough. My little boy needed a community, my little boys. My neighbors encouraged me to start a Sunday school. So my husband and I went searching for Muslims. This was the late 1970s. We flipped through the yellow pages. Anyone remembers that? Looking for Muslim-sounding names. Hello, I'm a Muslim and I live in Staten Island, want to meet up? They knew 2 people, those 2 knew 4 more, they knew a few more, and very quickly we had a small group, big enough to start a Sunday school. The problem was we had no teachers. So guess what? We became teachers. We had to send for books from Pakistan and keep educating ourselves, trying to stay just one level ahead of our children who were asking questions that we never asked when we were growing up in Pakistan because everybody around us was a Muslim, so there were no challenges. So we had to educate ourselves. But that wasn't enough. We wanted our children to have a house of worship, a place they could belong to be proud of. The problem was money, as in interest on loans is forbidden in Islam. Now, whereas all of us had a mortgage on our homes, the mosque was sacred. You couldn't mess around with that. So that meant cash purchase, which meant fundraising after fundraising after fundraising until people stopped looking us in the eye, and if we crossed paths in the Staten Island Mall, they would quickly move over to the other side. Eventually, we were able to purchase an old empty warehouse, which sat empty for a couple of years until we had enough money to start renovating it, and eventually opened the doors of the mosque in 1990. If you drive by Rhine Avenue, it sits there between Tarji and Richmond Road. What we experienced during those years was America at its best. When we needed a space for our Sunday school, the CEO of Bailey Seton Hospital offered us a cottage on the grounds. When our children held their first Sunday school graduation, the Staten Island Academy on Tote Hill offered their auditorium, and the guest who handed the certificates to the children was no other than Borough President Ralph Lamberti. When we decided to build a mosque, it was Ralph Lamberti my husband went to, who, true to his word, paved the way. When in 1988, my husband reached out to the Staten Island Advance, now SI Live, and asked them if he could write a monthly column on Islam, their response was, "When can you start?" When he approached the sister at St. Vincent's Medical Center, a Catholic hospital, where sister would say a prayer every morning over the PA system, and asked her if he could substitute her on Fridays and do a Muslim prayer over the PA system, her response was, "When can you start?" Only in America. Then tragedy struck. We were overseas on 9/11, and we returned to an America that had changed. In the aftermath of 9/11, the rhetoric was painful. Muslims were being associated, and our faith was being associated with terrorism. Muslims went low profile. Men shaved their beards. Women removed their hijab. Our youth started, people changed their names. Muhammad became Mo, Jafar became Jeff, and our youth started questioning the faith. And we were at risk of losing our soul. And it was at that point that the Muslims all over the United States realized that they had not done a good job of making themselves known. They had been involved in inreach, building Muslim communities, making good Muslims out of our children, and now they had to change direction and do outreach. And the first institutions that opened their doors to us were the houses of worship. They wanted to know us, we wanted to know them. And interfaith dialogue flourished. By then, my husband and I had moved to Manhattan, to the east side. Not moving up, but just downsizing. At that time, we were also dealing with a personal challenge. Our grandson Omar had been diagnosed with autism. And as Mary mentioned, I left my career as a hospital executive and started the New York chapter of the National Autism Association, and that's how I met Mary, who had become an active member of the board. In 2010, our 8-year-old grandson Omar, on the autism spectrum, was detained at the airport. He and his family were getting on a plane to go to Disney World when the authorities pulled him aside because his name was the same as a terrorist on the no-fly list. And they said, "We know it can't be him, he's just a kid, but we have our process. And this has to be cleared by Homeland Security and the State Department." My daughter-in-law texted me. I was in the office. I told her to hang in. I'm going to call the press. I called the New York Times. I called the Huffington Post. New York Times said, "We've already covered this story last week. We cannot run it again." Age of Autism ran it right away. I called my local assemblyman. He was in New York. My grandson was at an airport in Philadelphia. No one could help. Eventually, they came back and said, "No match, the terrorist is in his 20s. As in, duh. Anyhow, they missed their flight, and that event was a turning point in our lives. I had to do some soul searching. As a practicing Muslim, how do I cope when I and my family are confronted with adversity? God says in the Quran and Islamic tradition strongly emphasize the importance of taking action against wrongdoing, encouraging Muslims to correct wrongdoing with their hand. If possible, take action. If not, then with their tongue, speak out. And if not, then finally condemn it in your heart, which is really the weakest form of faith. On my husband's urging, I decided to take action by using the power of the pen, or keyboard in this case. You've got to write that book, he urged. For decades, he had been telling me, we've been trailblazers, we have a lot to share, why don't you write a book? But life had gotten in the way. But this time, and he said to me, it is not enough that we are engaged in interfaith dialogue in our local communities. We have to make ourselves known to people in the heartland, the coast on the west, the mountains on the north, the deserts in the south, and we can only do that by writing about it. So write your book and don't make it an academic discourse. Do it by telling stories so that you can change hearts and minds. So I did write Threading My Prayer Rug because I wanted the reader to know that the heart and soul of a Muslim mother is like that of any other. We have the same dreams, the same fears, the same worries, the same drives. And also because I did not want my grandchildren to be afraid to say, I am a Muslim. The book took me on the speaking circuit. People opened their homes and their hearts. They wanted to hear more, and my list of friends grew. We were learning from one another, and they became my teachers. Around the same time, I had reached out to a Jewish journalist, Walter Ruby, and asked if his boss, the rabbi, could write a blurb for my book. He read the manuscript, wrote back to me, said, yeah, he'll be happy to write a blurb, but I have an idea. Why don't the two of us write a book together? By that time, the 2016 election was in full swing, and by the time the two of us sat down to talk, Trump had been elected president, the Muslim travel ban had been rolled out, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism was on the rise, and we were beginning to feel an existential threat. So we crafted our message, which was that we are Americans first. We cannot allow the conflict in the Middle East to divide us here at home. What's happening in the Middle East means a lot to us. But we live here, not there, and we cannot allow ourselves to be divided, because if we do, democracy and pluralism will be threatened. Yes, we care, and we should do what we can, but also keep in mind that democracy is at stake in the United States. What we could do was focus on what is common to both our faiths. We explained 4 principles that unite us. If you save one life, it's as if you've saved all of humanity, which is both in the Quran and the Talmud. Welcome the stranger, repair the world, tikun ilam and islah, and stand up for the other when the other is oppressed. And there are many stories we related where these 4 principles have brought us together. By the time the book was published, We Refused to Be Enemies, in 2021, a conflict had broken out in Israel-Palestine. It was also the year of COVID, the pandemic. So we then were invited to give over 100 talks on Zoom and covered places all across America and overseas, and we were writing op-eds, how we can stay together. My husband, meanwhile, reached out to our network and said, invite us and we will come. We will come and give a talk on Islam 101. And people did invite us. And we, as Mary said, covered over 100 cities. At one time, our son asked us, Mom, where are you going this weekend? To Vermont. Who invited you? Somebody, we emailed, haven't met them. Where are you staying? With our host. Who are they? We have no idea. I mean, that was how blindly we just went there, and we would get off the train and look around, and if somebody waved to us, we knew that that was our host, and we'd get in the car and go to their home. And these people put in so much planning because they wanted to learn. And that is America at its best. And it was something of awful proportions that happened to bring out the best in people in America. Then October 7th happened. 1,200 civilians taken hostage, the Gaza war broke out, and the catastrophe in Israel, Gaza, ruptured our relationships here at home. We were back on the speaking circuit. I had to take comfort. I looked for answers in the Quran. And God says, all believers are people of the book, Muslims, Jews, and Christians. All believers are but brethren. Hence, whenever they are at odds, make peace between your two brethren and remain conscious of God so that you might be graced with his mercy. Chapter 49, verse 10. So Walter and Ruby and I took our message back in the living rooms, in the backyards, and on Zoom as to what can we do to preserve our relationship here at home. We need to listen to one another. We need to understand and know how each side feels. How do I, as a Muslim, feel about what's happening? And how does he, as a Jew, feel about what's happening? What do I, as a Muslim, expect from my Jewish brethren? And what does he, as a Jew, expect from Muslims? We also urged our listeners to take the following steps. Show up for one another. Show courage and reach out to each other. Acknowledge the other's pain, even if you don't agree with the circumstances. Be an upstander. Look out for the safety of each other. If you're riding the subway, look out for the young man in the yarmulke or the woman in the hijab. And if you see something or hear something, notify the authorities. Counsel your children. Listen to their concerns. Help them understand the conflict. Enable them to see the humanity in their fellow students so that they are not adversely affected and don't take negative feelings into the playground and into the classroom. The war wore on. By July 2024, 10,000 Gazans were killed. Children were starving. Hostages were still in captivity. We amplified our voices by starting a podcast and inviting peacemakers as guests. We were also in the 2024 presidential election season. Anti-war groups, pro-Palestinian groups, Muslims faced a conundrum. Who to vote for? Some couldn't find it in their heart to support an administration that had enabled the deaths of tens of thousands of civilians, most of them women and children. Others felt that the alternative would be worse. Till the very last day, many wrestled with their decision. Leaders who supported the democratic candidate invoked the example of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he made major concessions in a peace treaty with the pagans, but had the foresight to envision the long-term benefits. And he was right. After the votes were counted, if you looked at the pie chart, the vote had split 4 ways, and I'm talking about the Muslim community. Democrats, Republican, third party, and sit out the vote. Post-election surveys show that the Muslim vote did not swing the election. Our numbers are still small. But coming to the present, we are now dealing with a potential travel ban from Muslim countries. My family in Pakistan that visits every year is not coming, have decided not to come. And we are watching detention of anti-war students, deportation of those who spoke out peacefully, the threat of white nationalism, curtailment of civil rights and religious freedom, delegitimization of DEI, and much more. In this circumstance, we all have a role to play. We need people of faith, particularly clergy of all faiths, to be a collective voice of conscience in upholding the values of brotherhood. We want our clergy to staunchly oppose our country's descent into hatred and bigotry. And my being here and your inviting me speaks to that call to action. Thank you. Interfaith activists must focus on human rights, not politics. We must focus on the message that unifies us and be willing to get uncomfortable. We need to stand up for the principle of free speech, including speech that some of us find offensive. And let us not weaponize anti-Semitism to shut down protests and emasculate academia. We must caution our communities to refrain from labeling one another or labeling the actions of the other with loaded terms like terrorists, genocide, or anti-Semitic. It only drives us further apart. We can settle for less incendiary terms and still get our message across. Authorities must allow peaceful campus protests. If we try to shut the other down, it will do more harm than curtailing free speech. It will further fracture our communities and prevent us from working together on causes that are critical for our survival. School administrators must be proactive in preventing bullying, and parents need to be counseled on how to prevent transmitting anger and hatred to young children. Most effective that I have come across is the grassroots movements. Join groups that are ardently working in small groups, meeting in living rooms, listening and learning, deepening our understanding and empathy, and building relationships. I belong to the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, the Daughters of Abraham, scriptural readings, and interfaith book club. All these engender friendships and build empathy. And finally, seek guidance from the teachings of our faiths. In the Quran, God emphasizes the importance of patience in the face of adversity and promises reward for those who persevere. And I quote, "Indeed, Allah is with those who are patient." Chapter 2, verse 153. To me, that means active and conscious efforts to remain steadfast and virtuous under all circumstances, seeking nearness to God through unwavering faith and perseverance, exercising self-restraint from committing that which Allah forbids, such as anger and retaliation, and endurance in the face of grief and adversity. Islam ordains that we forgive those who mistreat us and respond with kindness. And if they disrespect us, we must still treat them with respect. We are urged to argue gracefully. In these challenging times, I place my trust in God, who says in the Quran, "Surely with every hardship comes ease." A reminder that difficult times are followed by a period of relief or success. encouraging perseverance and hope. I close with reading the closing verse of Surah Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran. God does not burden any human being with more than he is well able to bear. In his favor shall be whatever good he does, against him whatever evil he does. O our sustainer, take us not to task if we forget or unwittingly do wrong. O our sustainer, lay not upon us a burden such as thou did lay upon those who lived before us. O our sustainer, make us not bear burdens which we have no strength to bear. And efface thou our sins, and grant us forgiveness, and bestow thy mercy upon us. Thou art our Lord supreme. Succor us, then, against those who deny the truth. Amen. Thank you.
Please turn now in your grave hymnal to number 162. I will lay down my sword and shield. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna shake hands around the world, everywhere I roam, everywhere I roam, everywhere I roam. Gonna shake hands around the world, everywhere I roam. Gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You'll find the affirmation in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words are "To Soulfully Survive the World's Mayhem" by Heather Ryan Starr. May whatever gatherings or activities we engage in this Sunday afternoon help restore us, our connection to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and fun in this world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to soulfully survive the world's mayhem. And so ends our service. Please join us in the parish hall for hospitality.